number 3 here of important concepts for a better life. What we don't address, we repeat. And this goes back to the unconscious. I know, everything goes back to the unconscious. It's a really remarkable thing, the ways in which this sense of our mind has so much power. But what we don't address, we repeat. This is another one of Freud's kind of seminal concepts. And it's amazing that I'm quoting Freud so much because psychoanalysis has evolved so much from Freud. I know that oftentimes we think of psychoanalytic psychotherapy or psychoanalysis as intertwined with Freud. And while he was, in a way, the originator, the father, the one who birthed a lot of these ideas, the field has gone so far from him. However, for some reason, I'm feeling called to talk about this concept of his, because it's very accurate, and we see it in a lot of the trauma work that we do in the field, where it's incredible how what we don't face, what we don't address, what we don't tends to get repeated over and over in our lives, almost in some ways as a way of trying to repair. It's like something gets caught in the cycle, and we keep really hoping that maybe if I play it over again, I'll be able to repair it. If I can do it again, if I can get myself in another similar circumstance to what it was like as a child, then maybe this time I'll be able to do it differently. So Freud observed that unresolved emotional conflicts, particularly those stemming from early experiences, often resurface in our lives in repetitive ways. And these repetitions can manifest in behaviors, in relational dynamics, and emotional patterns, and they're often driven unconsciously by what he called the repetition compulsion. And so the repetition compulsion is a way that he tried to describe this unconscious tendency to reenact past traumatic or unresolved experiences, even when those experiences are painful and harmful. Now, this may seem counterintuitive, right? Like, why would repeat something that hurts us? And Freud suggested, and we have now seen over 100 years later, how accurate this is, that these repetitions serve as attempts to try to master the unresolved conflict or the emotional pain. So in essence, the psyche is trying to bring into consciousness something for resolution. I really like this idea that Carl Jung is known for, that like there is something that is driving us towards healing. He deeply believed that there are all sorts of ways in which we are trying to heal. We are trying to make whole. We are trying to repair. Our soul is working so hard to move us towards our best life. And so it's a similar idea that the psyche is trying to bring the issue into consciousness for resolution, but without awareness, without consciously bringing more attention to what's going on, we often repeat it instead of resolving it. So we're getting caught up in the cycle over and over again rather than resolving. But the fact that we're getting caught up in something over and over and over again is the minute we can notice that, now there's opportunity for us to bring some insight, some awareness. And when we can bring some awareness, we start to change the patterns. So some examples, right, of this can look like a person who experienced emotional neglect in childhood. They may now unconsciously seek out patterns who are emotionally unavailable. Right? This is like a on-the-nose one. We talk about it as like having daddy issues or having mommy issues, right? Like we're trying to get our partner to love us in the way that our daddy didn't. And we're finding ourselves being in a relationship with our daddies, with our partner who mimics a lot of behaviors like our fathers. Or, for example, if we're talking about the worthiness wound, right? Someone who grew up with a worthiness wound or feeling deeply unworthy, they may now sabotage opportunities for success. Unknowingly sabotaging. They're not aware that they're sabotaging, but they are finding themselves sabotaging the very thing that they want. And so then they're unknowingly perpetuating their inadequacy. They're playing the worthiness wound out like a fiddle. So Freud believed, we still believe, this is still true to this day, that if we can bring awareness into this pattern into breaking the cycle. If we bringing awareness breaks the cycle, by the more that we can understand what's going on, how is these repeating? Like, what are we hoping? What is the fantasy? What is going on here? If we can start to bring some awareness to it, things start to change. Yes. So, what we don't address, we repeat. And that self-awareness is really important part of emotional processing. And emotional processing is a really important part of self-awareness. It's not just, I know myself. I don't know how to get help because I just know myself so well. It's that self-awareness has to aid in emotional processing, or it just becomes an intellectual endeavor. Yeah. Now, to be clear, patterns don't repeat because we're doomed or because we're broken. They repeat because something remains unresolved. And when we start to bring some awareness to what is trying to get resolved, we start to disrupt the cycle and create something new. Okay. So that's, I think, a really important concept for a better life. There's often this way in the manifesting world that talks about bringing attention, like what we bring attention to tends to grow. So don't bring attention to negativity because it will grow it. It will be more alive. And I've never seen something more inaccurate in my entire life. This idea is so problematic on so many levels. But I think at the core of it, there's something really sweet, right? At the core of it, what I think this idea that the manifestation world is trying to address is that where we tend to go in our minds is perpetuating something painful for ourselves. If we're finding ourselves in negative loop cycles, we're probably going to continue to experience a lot of pain. So the core of this, I think, is a way in which the world of manifestation is attempting to name and address this idea that what we don't address, we repeat, that something painful keeps happening. And if we're just continually going into these like negative thought patterns, it's probably connected to then negative behavioral self-defeating patterns. And so the theory goes, if you can address the thoughts, if you can have positive thoughts, if you can kind of control the thoughts that you have, then you are breaking the cycle of the negative patterns, right? And negative behaviors. So I think we're trying to say the same thing. The problem, of course, with the way in which I think the manifestation world is attempting to name this and address this is that what they're inherently saying, what it often gets translated to for us is don't have certain thoughts. Don't have certain thoughts because then bad things will happen. And if you bring awareness to the bad things inside ourselves, we're giving it more power. It's going to become more alive. We're going to create bad things. And there's like an omnipotent kind of fantasy in that like our thoughts have so much power to control our lives and our wish to be able to control more of our lives to make sure that nothing bad ever happens. That's how often I see people get internalize manifestation. It becomes a way that we're trying to police our minds. And that then isn't the point. That it doesn't work that way. Policing our minds actually will only create more strife and will only put more into our unconscious, right? We're driving more stuff into our unconscious by trying to block out certain thoughts. That's not how we break patterns. We break patterns by bringing more attention and awareness and curiosity into why we're thinking a certain way, why we're moving towards that. And if you're finding yourself getting stuck in these quote unquote negative loop patterns, and that the only way you know how to get out of that is by saying don't have those thoughts, you're probably playing out a kind of pattern of relating. I'm fantasizing that you were probably related to in a similar fashion, and now you're doing it to yourself. You were probably a parent, caregiver told you don't have certain thoughts, don't think that way. And now you're continuing to live that experience on, and it's very painful. And you don't have to kind of suffer alone in that.